sure you've all heard, if you watch Field McConnell, and you've seen 107, that you have seen information regarding the 4th of July. Well, I spoke on this a little bit last night. Here is a website from Jennifer Mack. Jennifer Mack, this is a do-it-yourself JFK Jr. wearing a MAGA hat mask website. So you can go here to this website. I'm going to go ahead and drop this in the chat box here. You guys can check it out. Go download this mask and you can make it yourself. Yensid, who's going to be here any moment, we're just waiting for him to jump into the Zoom meeting, and we're waiting for Juan to get his microphone working. But Yensid has created a website where you can go and you can upload photos of yourself wearing the JFK Jr. mask, because this, the whole idea here is that somebody has suggested that JFK Jr. is going to show up on July 4th. Now, I don't know that that's going to happen, you guys. I've never been a particular believer necessarily in this as a theory. But, I mean, I think that maybe it's possible it's been floated around just to just to freak out the deep state. Can you imagine how upset Hillary Clinton would be if she actually thought that JFK Jr. was alive? What a mind meld, or excuse me, mind screw. She would just be freaking out. All right, Kimberly Bogan says, God bless Cindy, her family, and Michael. Stay strong. We are all praying for you. May God bring this little boy home safely, definitely. Nathan Shaw said there was more to that story, but they won't let me send. That's okay, Nathan. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. So right here, Jennifer had created a tutorial on how to do this yourself. Let's see. Let's go ahead and watch the video.
What do you think about the JFK Jr. mask that I made available on this radio show at?
Well, I think that as an audience, if the audience wants to be identified, to be known between each other, they should be carrying their mask with them. If they're at a Trump rally, maybe they can find the right moment to don their masks for a minute or two. The rallies end with some great music, and maybe they can do their sing-along and use their mask at the same time. I think it's important that we all be of the same mind.
You can't wait on their affirmation. You can't wait on their approval. You can't wait on their support. Sometimes you just got to run and look behind you and say, everybody who wants to run, but I can't stop running because you're not running with me. Listen to me, hear me. You can't stop chasing your dream just because somebody in your life is chasing with you. You can't stop believing in yourself just because somebody in your life won't believe in you. You can't stop chasing the dreams of your life just because when you know when you do it, you're going to have to do it all by yourself.
Guys, are you there? Steve, are you there? Yensid?
All right, there we go. We got it?
Oh, got you. Juan, you're in here.
Yeah.
Finally.
Boy, that was a struggle for me. I sure apologize to your people. I thought it was easier than it was. I don't know why it wasn't cooperating with us. So
not a problem. I'm glad you're on the phone now. That's all that matters. You guys, I'm pleased to announce that we've got Juan Savin on the line. How are you tonight, Juan? Are you there?
Yep. Well, I'm here. You hearing me?
I can hear you. But yes,
yeah,
I just asked how you were and introduced you to the audience.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Well, you know, we obviously have so many interesting, fun things going on. We've got a great weekend week and weekend coming ahead of us, but I did hear portions of your last interview, and I wanted to add just a couple of things to that. Maybe a reference point that some of your listeners, probably not very many, would remember. Back in the mid-'90s, we had a number of cases involving CPS and all of the really evil things that were happening in that period of time. You know, this is 25 years ago, and the horrors and atrocities that were occurring across the country in Child Protective Services just off the charts. And so let me just touch on a couple of things that might give your researchers and people who are looking at this some starting points that they're not aware of just because they're new to this subject matter. And I'll hit a couple things that are way off in left field that a couple of your people might go, oh, Juan, my gosh.
Juan, real quick, before you continue, I've got a lot of people saying that this is not you on the phone. I would just like to say that I have a much higher tech system than what Field uses. I believe that when you call into Field's program, it's basically just playing on a speaker. On my system, Juan is actually calling through the computer. So yes, it is going to sound a little different, but no, I have no reason to suggest that this is not the actual Juan O. Savin. This is him. This is really him calling in, and thank you very much for doing so. Okay, please continue with what you were saying about CPS.
Well, the real push in this latest incarnation, in my personal opinion, happened during the Bush and especially the Clinton presidencies. It went to some level that was just beyond comprehension for most people. So, for example, when President Clinton came into office, we had a lot of people that were gay rights that, you know, felt this was their coming out time, and coming into the second term especially. So, for example, the governor of the state of Washington, Lowry, he was very into gay rights. And so he essentially, by executive order in the state of Washington, said that because gays had been discriminated against in the way that children were placed, that it was a civil rights issue, just like had occurred with blacks in the 60s. And so they needed to correct this disproportionate situation where children hadn't been being placed with gay couples or gay persons by placing children with gays. Now, in the regulations, it said that it was supposed to be, you know, kids that had a proclivity or a leaning, a tendency towards needing to be, you know, in a gay household where people would understand them and all that. But they're placing newborns with couples as though they are, you know, have a proclivity towards being gay, and so they needed to be placed with these couples because they were going to be discriminated in how they were educated if they were with a regular family. Bizarre things like that. So for literally the first several thousand kids after Governor Lowry took office, they were all being placed with gay couples.
Like exclusively?
Well, they would argue that that's not true and everything else, but it really was true. There was a very, very large number that were placed with gay couples and families. Now, anybody, I don't know that you would have access to it or not. It's even possible maybe you'd be able to get him to do an interview. But Mike Reagan, President Reagan's son, was a radio host during that era and did a large number of interviews on this exact subject with people that were doing these fights. And you have to understand that the reason Mike Reagan is unique, when Mike Reagan was young, and I apologize, I'm right by an airport, and I've got a lot of racket in the background, and I have no control over that. The problem is that Mike Reagan, he lived in, his dad was an actor, his mom was an actress. in that era. And so he was placed in boarding home type school situations. He went to summer camps and stuff like that a lot because his parents were working. And that was the way Hollywood kids were raised in that era. And he was actually being groomed by one of these monsters during a summer school situation. Once his parents became aware of it, the person was caught, convicted. But Mike was actually a victim of one of these people that was a predator sexually, and then was, he would be threatened with the pictures that this person took of him, that they'd be shown to his parents if he did anything or if he told anybody, etc. So Mike has written a book about that experience.
I believe I've heard of that.
How horrible it was. Yes, and so Mike was very brave, really, and kind of coming out and talking about this at a very difficult time. But he's taken this issue to heart and has really been an advocate for children caught up in these kinds of situations. And so in the mid-'90s, when he was the number 2 radio host in the country, number 1 in afternoon drive time radio, had 600 affiliates carrying his show. And Rush was number 1 in the morning. Mike Reagan was number 1 in the afternoon. In fact, in 96, they were so effective in that 95, 94 era, which I'm glad to have been there during all of that time period. Mike and Rush were made honorary members of the 96th Congress because of their work in getting Republicans elected in the 96th Congress with this pact they made, if we're elected, we'll do this and this and this, that Newt Gingrich put together. But they were the radio proponents that really brought the nation together in many ways, the conservatives together in rallying conservatives to the cause to get out voting and to, come up against these things were happening. And so one of the key things that Mike was going after was the horrors that were happening in the Child Protective Services. Now, some of the stories, one of the most pivotal ones, and a handful possibly of your listeners would be aware of this, and I've seen the internet's been wiped clean of all the history, and I'll have to see if I can pull up some things for you to show people, but was the Hope Robbins case, Robbins, out of Washington. And that was a young girl that was taken 13 years of age at her new junior high school that she was going to. In fact, the exact same junior high school that Mary Kay Letourneau worked at, who was the predator of the young boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Billy.
The same junior high school. She was called into the principal's office, and then they literally decided that she was under threat from her mom because her mom wouldn't let her see a boy who had given her a marijuana cigarette. They just moved to Washington from Kentucky, and the part of the story that is not public, has never been public, I believe I'm breaking this in your show, it's the only time it's ever been said publicly, she was a witness. And she moved to Washington because she was a witness on the drugs being shipped through Arkansas and into Kentucky and other locations around the country. And she had helped provide the evidence that led to a lot of the convictions that led back to Mena and in Arkansas. And so when she provided that evidence for her own safety, for her child's safety, she moved to Washington to hide out. The only thing she didn't understand, her daughter had been born prematurely and was called a Webley child. And so Webley is this trust that was set up in the 60s, or 70s, I should say, where children that were born prematurely, it was decided that it was the chemicals that caused children to be born prematurely, chemical exposure, and it was hard to tell which chemical might have caused a specific incident. So they made this big, huge trust with hundreds of millions of dollars in it, and all the chemical companies have to put a little bit of money into it. And then any child that's born prematurely can have access to this Webley trust as though the mother the reason they were born prematurely is because the mother was exposed to chemicals. In her case, her mother was a hairdresser. So Hope Robbins was born prematurely, one of the earliest preemie babies ever to survive at 5 months, I think 3 weeks at that time. And so she had this trust fund that she had access to. Her mother had never tapped it, but she was signed up for it. When she came to Washington State, she had to be signed up for that in the public school. The public schools have to know about it, because if they decide that a child has a learning disability or has problems, then they can tap that fund for assistance, for educational assistance for the child. But it's like putting a target on the child, because here's millions of dollars available to the system.
Right.
If they get that child. So as soon as she signs her daughter up, all of a sudden the counselor wants to talk to her and visit with her and everything else. They saw her as a paycheck.
Yep.
And so she was being targeted behind the scenes, and the counselors taking all this extra time. And it was a group of lesbians that were in there capturing these kids out and putting them with friends, etc. Because, you know, get a kid, and then if you're taking care of a child as a foster child, and the child has learning disabilities, has special needs, well, shoot, you can practically quit your job and just take care of the child, run them around in a van all day, and take them to every doctor's appointment, all that. You know, get a sex toy and get paid for it. Is literally what it ends up being. And I know that I'm just going to drive some of the people crazy out there that don't want to hear this and everything else, but in my opinion, after looking at this for a very long time, that's exactly the case. And those interviews that Mike had on in that era, at that time, the witnesses, the people that came forward, that's what they talked about. And so, amongst other things, just as an aside, just because it comes to mind this second, it's been bothering me over the last few months as I've thought about Pizzagate, for example, and all these other things. One of the interesting things that came out back in that era, and who knows, maybe we get lucky and he's listening to the show right now. There was a young man in Spokane, Washington at the time, and he had run away and had gotten to Western Washington, gotten to someone that was connected with Reagan's show, where he had an affiliate in Washington State. One of Mike's affiliates was KBI, one of the largest talk show stations in the country at the time. And they got him on the show. And so he'd been, as a teenager, he'd been in the system for years. And here he was, a very good-looking, at 15, 16 years old, he's already 6 foot tall, blonde hair, a little bit of a curl, looked like an Adonis type of a physique, extremely good-looking. So he and other boys have been placed at a home over by Spokane. And part of their counseling, and I hope your listeners will understand, I'm saying this so that you are well armed in these fights, but I'm not trying to do it to be prurient. Mm-hmm. He and others of these boys, the counselors would talk to him about everything, including, you know, their stresses and strains in life. And so they were counseled that they need to masturbate to relieve tension. And in fact, they were going to be forced to masturbate at just to make sure that they were doing it. And then they would have to produce a bottle with some sperm in it when they were done, so that they could prove that they had actually ejaculated.
I can't. You know, this is what I was just talking about, Juan, is that this is one of those uncomfortable truths. You know, these are the kinds of things that nobody likes to hear about, because it is just absolutely so astounding. It completely destroys your paradigm, and it doesn't matter how much you know already about the crap that goes on in this world, how sick these people are. When you hear someone actually talk about it, you immediately recoil. This is the kind of thing that we want to stay as far away from, but unfortunately, it's also the kind of thing that people need to know and they need to be educated about so that you can protect yourself, so you can protect your children. Keep your kids as far away from these people as possible.
Well, and listen, I mean, so this young man realizes that twice a FedEx truck is coming by and picking up packages, and oh, by the way, they happen to have a nitrogen cooler in the nurse's office. They're freezing the sperm and shipping it out. They have pictures, files on each of these boys, and these women that want to have babies together are picking from a box or a file cabinet of pictures of boys that they want, their description and their blood type, and they've been tested. They're healthy. They don't have any diseases, anything like that. They can pick the kids in couples in various parts of the world. This young man is very stressed out when he's describing the situation that he might have children all over the place being raised by people with ideas that had no resemblance to how he believes or thinks. And here's his kids, and he has no way to find out where his children might be.
And how many times?
Because
has
they
this happened?
were, and how many times it happened, and then you think of Pizzagate, and then the questions about, what else are they doing with these children that they're having?
Wow. Yeah. It is just absolutely mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing.
So that still to this day troubles me. Now that was broadcast live back in, I believe that would have been about 97 or so. And I think even Mike Reagan could vet that story for your listeners if he was ever available or wanted to talk about it. It certainly is not. I'm not talking about something that can't be proven by other sources.
Right.
And any of those young men that were involved in that, when they realized what was happening, they ran away.
Right.
These are young guys, and they realized, oh my gosh, what's going on? And they ran away, and they're deeply upset at what could be taking place. Now, nothing ever happened at that location. I mean, I can tell you the horror stories. It's beyond comprehension. One of the houses, the Peggy Jeffries house. This is a name that was in the public purview. It's not a name that is something private or whatever. That was a emergency placement house in South Seattle, Washington, and that emergency placement house had hundreds and hundreds of kids being placed in it for temporary placement every year. So it was a 4-bedroom house. One is occupied by the mother, one is occupied by her adult daughter, and one is occupied by the adult daughter's 2 young girls. And then there's 1 bedroom left and a little basement area. And they, at times, on a night-to-night basis, had 18 to 25 kids placed at that house. 18
to 25 kids in a single house?
Yes, in a single house where there's only 1 bedroom available. And so the state is paying them for all those kids. They get, a couple $100 a night for taking an emergency placement. The kid could be brought there by the sheriff or somebody else to just keep them there because they've been taken away from the parent. So one of the interesting things in the records related to that house was that there was not just a handful, but dozens of children under 6 months old, and they're listed as a runaway.
Under 6 months old, and they're listed as a runaway.
Not mother and daughter as a runaway. Not mother and daughter as a runaway. Just a small child, and it's a notation runaway. Well, who ran away with the child? The child didn't leave on its own. The child was placed there with an emergency placement runaway.
Wow.
And one of the children that I remember very specifically, Lamika Johnson. Lamika Johnson's a 13-year-old girl. She was placed at that house, ran away, placed at that house, ran away, placed at that house, ran away, at Peggy Jeffrey's house. There was 24, as I recall, different reports by police, firefighters, neighbors, taxi cab drivers, everything you can imagine. It just went on and on. A couple dozen different reports. Doctors, not one, but a couple of different doctors and nurses made emergency reports to CPS that this young girl, 13 years of age, had cuts on her body that were ritual in nature, including around her vagina.
Yeah.
And so they report these horrendous things. And what happens? The girl gets placed back there again. There was a black pimp that was grooming her, and he would pick her up and take her off until she'd get fed. In this house, there wasn't even a doorknob on the house. The doorknob had been removed by somebody. The CPS paid for doorknobs to be replaced, allegedly, because neighbors are complaining, and they'd be gone. So the house hasn't even got a lock on the front door, and they're just running these kids through there. And then the kids aren't there. They're all runaways half the time. So, for example, one other thing that should get this audience very concerned. Now, this is 25 years ago, and 30, because these events have been going on for years prior to even Mike Reagan's broadcasts and other national hosts at the time, because there was a whole flurry of hosts around the country trying to cover this subject and do a good job of it, and they did. People came out and talked about, how CPS was completely off. It had gone to some new level that was not, couldn't be excused.
Yeah.
And there was people trying to sue and do different things to stop what was going on. And the state just, fought every lawsuit, brought people in. They settled a handful here and there, but they fought through it. And then the various hosts that have been covering these types of stories started losing their affiliates in various places. So, for example, KVI was a conservative talk show host station, got bought up, and then they changed their format to classic music, and they let all their hosts go. And before that happened, in the months before that, they had decided not to renew their contract, for example, with Mike Reagan. That was one of the first places across the country that was carrying a show. It was an anchor for the network. And other places, these hosts that were pushing this subject, that were on it, they started losing affiliates. There was pressure behind the scenes happening. One of or two of the hosts that were covering it there in Washington, and the reason I mentioned Washington, because it was one of the worst in the country. It was getting more money per capita per number of actual state residents, I think, than any other state in the union at the time in federal matching money. Because remember, if you get a special needs child, and anytime a child is indicated to be gay or coming out gay, the interpretation is that is a special needs child. If you're a special needs child, then you get extra federal matching money as a special needs child. So if they just take any kid off the street and they place it with a family, they get X amount of dollars. If they decide to classify that child as a special needs child for medical, emotional, mental reasons, then there's additional money, dramatically more money for a special needs child. And then if there's private trust money like the Webley Fund, which was like a cash register, an ATM, then they can come back and they need, special van, and they need special housing, and they need a special counselor 24 hours a day, and it just goes on and on. And they start checking off these boxes, and these kids become worth literally millions of dollars to the system. And then you need more social workers and more this and that. So Washington was one of these states where they had it down to an art to classify and reclassify these kids. So back, 20 years before this, before the 90s, there was an investigation going in to look at how Washington was running some of these operations related to the kids and all that. The FBI showed up in force with a couple dozen agents, as I recall. And they were going to go in and start auditing the books in the state agency the next morning. That night, they had a fire, destroyed half the building where all the records were. Like a $300 million fire or something, of course.
Of course.
So to think that this is just going on now, these people have been well practiced. This is institutionalized.
Yeah.
And I have to say, all of that has to be balanced with, there are lots of honest, sincere people that a person goes to school, they want to help people. They may have had even problems in their own life, and they just want to do something that's meaningful in life. And they want to be counselor. They want to help kids out. They go in sincerely wanting to do this, and they get in the system. And the hard part is that these monsters are in there working side by side. And you want to be in the system. You know there's a little problem here and there. If they know that you're not, a secret handshake person, they kind of work around you and give you stuff to keep you happy. But these people are also in there gleaning and looking and working with each other to kind of move some of the stuff off to their own side. And so it's a game where you don't realize that there's some bad people in the mix. And so the good people, they're almost a foil. And the people in the system, they're just trying to do good. When you get them off to the side, there's some problems and they see things a little here and there, but the system is generally good. Well, they're not in the secret handshake crowd. They're living a little bit in denial. They're trying to protect their own understanding of things. The reality is the system is totally screwed up, and money is a huge part of it. They're using these kids as a paycheck to build these federal programs, to control the schools and control the way things are done. And if you think that I'm overblowing it, my only retort would be that you don't understand the magnitude, the gravity of the situation.
Exactly.
It's far worse. It's far bigger than the average person wants to understand. And part of the thing that happens, you live a normal life, your kids are there, you're not in the system, whatever, and you don't want to hear about this. And hey, we have professionals that deal with it, and I don't want to think something bad because I have a relative that works for this agency, or I have a friend that works there and they're not evil, and you're just painting them all with a broad brush, and it's only one or two here or there. And so you're apologizing. There shouldn't be one evil situation. When the Peggy Jeffries house situation was exposed, and it was just one house, nothing was ever done that absolutely stopped that. It should have been stopped. And the whole freaking, for 5 blocks around, should have been freaking taped off as a crime scene. This stuff that was going on there is beyond comprehension. And the documentation was off the charts. So just one side, there was a wonderful attorney, had a decent law practice, had been around for some time, came to understand the problem, talked to his wife, talked to his kids, said, I'm going to take part of my practice and go after these cases. And unfortunately, it can be time consuming and expensive. They don't have any money. This particular case, I'm going to help the mother. We're going after him. And we'll probably make some money down the road, but it might be 5, 6, 7 years because the state's going to fight everything we do. Maybe they settle sooner, but I'm gonna kind of put things in line. He actually took a mortgage out in his house, and he was going after money. He was going to make some money on this with the crimes for his services, and he was going to help the mother out. But it was also it was going to cost him a lot of money up front because he had to fund it himself. So he goes in, he starts through the stuff, he gets discovery, he gets, miles of documentation. He's got stuff, for example, the girl Hope Robbins, after she was taken from her mom when she's 14, the people that she's with, they take her to strip clubs. And they would get money while she's doing it. It's in the papers. It's in the state's own records. This is not talking, from outer space.
Wow.
And the people involved, and she supposedly has a girlfriend who's lesbian, but the girlfriend is one of the people she's placed with for her care. But because the girlfriend hasn't turned 19 yet, even though she's an adult, the sexual relationship, she's being groomed is what she's really being done.
Exactly.
And then taking her to the strip clubs on. Because she's not 5 years older than the girl, she's like 4 years and 9.5 months. They can't charge her with a crime. It's an adult and a child situation. Things like that, it drive you crazy. In fact, the representative from the state of Washington, who was a sheriff's head of the sheriff's department in King County, he actually looked at that case, the whole Robbins case, and said, I said the law is the law, and and the prosecutor's not going to go along with it. I'd like to charge this person as an adult, and then all the other stuff, because nobody else would come forward, and the girl had been groomed. She's in the system, and she's with these people, and just horrible. I mean, I get almost apoplectic when I remember all the things that happened in that time. So today,
Juan, real quick,
if you can imagine 25 years, yeah.
We've only got 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left. And
all right, well, let me just wrap it up. Just one sentence thing. So all these years, this is far more advanced today than it was then. This problem, when we talked with people about it at that time, people wanted to turn their mind off. Well, that's why it's here now. When you get to this issue, it's about everything that we consider important as Americans, as conservatives. There is no aspect of the issue. This is, in my opinion, if you cannot protect the children, you can't protect any of us. And these monsters in our midst who are preying on these children, that's on our dollar. That's under our watch. We are responsible for them. And if we can't protect them, then everything else, it's just, it doesn't mean anything, because we can't protect our own kids, and we can't protect our neighbor with their own kids. To turn a blind eye on this is one of the most horrendous things that can happen in civilized society. We're allowing these monsters to use our assets, our tools, our government, our tax money to prey on other neighbors, other children. And any given day, it could be your child, it could be you. Yeah. You cannot look the other way on this. It is one of the most, if not the most critical issue before us, and it goes all the way back to Pizzagate and everything else.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people uncomfortable in the chat, a lot of people upset about the fact that we're talking about this, but this is one of those red pills that you can't not swallow, guys. Okay, this is something that
let me just add one thing. I just want to tell you one other thing. It only takes a second. At this same house, there was a van that would come by twice a week and pick up kids that wanted to go to the Satanist meeting in Federal Way that was held twice a week at a house in Federal Way, and then they'd get something to eat on the way home. The kids weren't getting any food at the house, so kids would go along just going to get something to eat after they go to the Satan meeting. And this is, we talk about, kids having after-school stuff today, and we're all appalled. Kids were being taken, not just from this house, but they were picking up at other houses and taken to the Satan coven meetings in Federal Way, Washington, from houses. And these are young teenagers.
Yeah.
This is in the 90s, and this was talked about in the public forum, and nobody went to jail. I'm telling you that you cannot think too big on this subject.
No.
And it wasn't just in Washington, it's across the country. We're a different generation. It may have happened during a prior generation. We now have the watch. We cannot look the other way. We have to engage on this issue for these parents and these kids.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, listen, in the couple of minutes we've got left, everybody wants to know about the 4th of July. And we've got that website that was put together by Jennifer Mack, where everybody can go and download your own copy of JFK Jr., create your own mask. And then Yensid, are you on the line as well? Looks like your mute is on. There you go. Yensid, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. And you've built a website right here where everybody can take a picture of themselves with a John mask, JFK Jr. mask, and then you can upload it yourself. Now, the whole idea here is Doesn't matter if JFK Jr. is alive or not, you guys. It's the idea of who he was and what he stands for and what that means to the deep state. And even if JFK Jr. was alive, you know, his life would be in danger if he came out and showed himself on the 4th of July or any day. So, but if everybody shows up and they all are wearing JFK Jr. masks, it's like that scene in V for Vendetta with Guy Fawkes, you guys. So let's talk about this website here, Yensid, and what you're hoping that people are going to do with it.
Okay, so essentially it's all based on the old idea of mailing lists, meaning that's how the internet got started. So all you got to do to submit your image is just send an email to jfkjr@yensid.com, and it'll show up on the Google Groups page, and then that gets scraped for images. They get put on a big mega memes folder type thing, and voila, ready to go. But everything everybody sends up is all archived and good to go.
Excellent. And it's also my understanding that you're going to be putting up a video and working with Jason Was a Gentile, one of our favorite guests on the show. Is that right?
Yeah, so I put everything together, started building this folder, and all of a sudden I get this notification from Google that your movie is ready. And okay. I pop it up, and it's got some open source music, and it's a slideshow of about all the images that have been uploaded so far. And I'm going, what the hell? And so I'm like, oh, this is cool, but the music sucks. And yeah, so I took the whole thing and redid it to Jason Was a Gentile's Deplorable People song.
Excellent.
And that's on the website. I can't get it to play embedded. If anybody else can, let me know. But
it looks like it's working for me. I'm showing it as an embedded YouTube video. I can see it right here on the screen. So
right.
I'm gonna throw the link for this in the
yes.
chat box, everybody, so you guys can go there as well. Go check that out. And then, of course, we've also got the Jennifer Mack website where you can download your own copy of the Junior Make America Great Again hat photo. It's a great photo. You can use that to make this for yourself. But are you guys going to be at any place in particular for the 4th of July?
I'm not. I'm going to be hanging here trying to keep up with all the image submissions. Right now, the scraping is manual, but don't worry. I have lots of bags of popcorn and lots of coffee.
Good stuff.
But you know, the idea is we're going to start with this JFK Jr. mailing list, but this is a way to beat the social media giants. This is using all their tools against them. They can't screw with email. They can't screw with discussion forums that are owned by a corporate entity. So yeah, this is something where we're going to build subjects like Q and maybe 9/11, Keep America Great, hundreds of lists, and it's all one place that I'm the gatekeeper, and that's it. There's nobody else.
Excellent. Juan, would you explain to us the reasoning behind the JFK Jr. mask? I got a couple of people saying that they don't understand.
Well, you need to hide in a crowd, and so they snipe us out, just like talking about the CPS stuff. They pick out an individual just like they picked out our president and killed him because he was going against the machine. Anytime somebody, the nail that sticks up, they go after him, they take him out, and now that voice is silenced. If we present ourselves unified, closing ranks together, then it's harder for them to pick us out of the crowd. President Trump, his close friend, is that image. And if we can hide in a crowd, then we can all be present in that spirit. We grew up in the shadow of the assassination of President Kennedy, and we are all a product of that event, but we're adults now. And we might have been a kid by the side of the road when it happened. But we're adults now, and we're not going to let it happen again. We're not going to let the president and his family carry the whole weight that we as a nation need to take. And in one spirit, we're going after these monsters. And it's similar to the CPS thing. So Field is offering some rewards for people who get a picture of them with their mask of Junior at various places. And then Yensid has been posting those pictures and put them into the videos. People will be able to add their picture, and those will be rotated into the video periodically with the music, and they can send it out in their social tweets, etc., to friends like that and be part of it. And we are all that child by the side of the road, living in the shadow of those assassinations, those false flags, and we're not going to take it anymore. We're taking our country back. Slaves no more.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I just want to say, got some people who don't want to do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But, I personally like the idea of what this represents to the deep state. I mean, I remember when his plane went down, and I remember the way that everything went with Bill Clinton not searching for him and Carolyn and her sister. I remember Hillary Clinton sweeping into that Senate seat. And I've often thought, how would things have been different if, that night would have went a little bit differently, The deep state...
Well, remember this. The Q operation goes further back than you understand or
yes.
people readily recognize. And the preparations for that went back significantly further. The need to go after this monster that we call the deep state has been understood and present for a very long time. And so a lot of things were done in preparation to preserve the opportunity to come back and fight when we were in a better position. And that moment is coming very quickly, is arguably on us now. The fight's not going to be over in a day or a week, but we are ready to re-engage in a meaningful way right now and take this to them, take them out.
All right, excellent. Well, I just want to say we're running over, you guys, and I know that people were a little upset that I said we were going to have to close the show, but we've been on for over 2 hours, and I need to get the dogs and go on a walk. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has been here tonight. I do need to give a couple of thank yous for super chats. Let's see, Jody L792. She said, "I love Juan. Listen to him on Able Danger and McAllister. Please tell him we're so grateful for all he's shared and is doing. God bless." Tom Price gave a super chat. Thank you for that, Tom. Puggy's number 2 frog. Can Juan please stress the importance of love in the plan? I think that we'll definitely touch on that next time. Sean W. said, as Q said, these people are...
Can I ask one quick question or a favor too?
Go ahead.
If you could put a link to that interview from last week. Space Shot put it on, and we had tremendous amount of people that came to it, but there may be other people in your chat tonight that are not aware of that interview. I think it's an important one. If they haven't listened to it, maybe you could link to it.
I'll be happy
to provide them that opportunity. And then a shout out to Space Shot if he's out there. Thank you so much for posting that, and for all the people that have commented. I am just can't tell you how amazed I am at the responses. We don't do any of this for money. There's nobody doing anything to make a buck here. We're doing it because we love our country. And just like with these children and with this mother, if we don't close ranks to protect these people and to work with them and to help them, there's nobody there for them. This is the community that has to go back and change the world, and that's what we're here to do right now.
Excellent, excellent. And then also one more thank you, or two more, excuse me. Teresa C., thank you for the super chat. And Alexandria Occasional Cortex says, I serve at the pleasure of the president, as do we all. What I'm going to do, guys, is when this show is done coding, I'm actually going to be splitting it up because it's really important. I think that sometimes people don't get all the way through the shows because of how long they are. So this way, we'll be able to share the first half of the show and then the second half of the show. If you guys want to do that, once we're all done, you will get the notifications as long as you have those turned on. If you don't, then just check back later on tonight. You should be able to find it. So thank you, Yensid. Thank you, Juan 07, for joining us tonight. And I'm sure that we will be speaking with both of you again soon. I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for joining us. God's Guy, thank you for that super chat. Love you too, bud. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News for Saturday Night Livestream. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.